Virgo, close your eyes for a moment and feel this. Can you sense the shift in the air? Can you feel that subtle tremor within your soul, as if something greater than you is already at work? There is someone in your life who is about to be removed, not by your choice, not by theirs, but by a force far more powerful than the two of you combined. This is not coincidence. This is not chance. This is divine intervention. The universe, with surgical precision, is rearranging the emotional chessboard of your life. Every piece is being shifted, every move calculated, not to punish you, but to free you. Because, Virgo, you have been carrying bonds that no longer belong to your destiny. You have given your loyalty, your patience, your heart, even when it cost you your own light. And now, heaven itself is stepping in to release you. Think about this. When God removes someone from your path, it is not rejection. It is protection. It is liberation. It is the opening of a new chapter that you cannot yet see. And yes, it may sting, it may break your heart for a moment. But in truth, it is the hand of the divine cutting the ropes that have kept you from rising to your full potential. Virgo, you will only understand this later, but right now, let this message sink in. You are not being abandoned. You are being chosen. Chosen to walk lighter, freer, and closer to the true vision of your soul's calling. And so, as you listen, know this. You are stepping into sacred territory. What is happening now is not ordinary life. It is a holy rearrangement of destiny. Welcome to Buddhist teachings. Here, we unveil the mysteries of the zodiac and the wisdom of the soul. Before we dive deeper into this journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support gives us the strength to continue creating messages that awaken, heal, and empower. Virgo, the story that follows is not just a prediction. It is a prophecy. And today, the universe has chosen you to hear it. 1. Virgo's sacred separation. The divine hand behind every goodbye. There comes a moment in every soul's journey when the universe stops whispering and begins rearranging. For Virgo, this is not simply coincidence, not a matter of chance encounters or sudden departures. It is destiny making itself known in the language of endings. The signs have been gathering like quiet storm clouds, small disruptions, patterns of discontent, the sense that something no longer fits no matter how you try to force it. You may have tried to hold on, to repair, to pour more of yourself into a bond that was already breaking. But there is a deeper intelligence at work here, a force that does not ask for your permission. It moves with surgical precision, cutting away what no longer serves your soul's unfolding. This separation, as painful as it feels, is not punishment. It is protection. Imagine a parent pulling a child away from a flame, even as the child cries for what was warm and familiar. Love sometimes looks like removal, like distance, like being forced into the wilderness so you can finally hear your own voice. The divine, in its extreme tenderness, is not sparing you from pain but from stagnation. What you are losing now is not your destiny, it is the weight that blocks it. When we are older, we learn that departures are not simply endings. They are thresholds. In my own reflections, I've seen how the hardest goodbyes were the very doors that led me to myself. It was only in hindsight that I could see the perfection in what once felt like betrayal. You too, Virgo, will look back and recognize that this was a holy intervention, a fierce kind of mercy that pried your fingers loose from what you could not release on your own. History is filled with stories of leaders, artists, and prophets who endured their own forced separations. Think of Moses led away from the comforts of Egypt, of Nelson Mandela stripped of freedom only to discover a vision larger than any prison. Greatness is often born in the furnace of loss. And though your pain may not echo on the scale of nations, it is no less profound. For your soul, this is the exile that makes the promised land possible. So allow the grief to have its place. Let the tears come, not as proof of weakness but as proof that you loved deeply. Yet do not mistake the ache for a verdict against you. This departure is not the universe's rejection, it is the universe's redirection. The person leaving, or the bond dissolving, is not the center of your fate. They were a chapter, not the book. You are being written into a new story, one where your wholeness is not negotiated or diminished, but honored. The Virgo heart is notorious for clinging to loyalty, for giving until there is nothing left. But loyalty becomes a cage when it chains you to what erodes your light. This cosmic separation is an act of liberation disguised as loss. It is spirit itself removing the anchors so that you may finally set sail. And here's the truth I want you to carry, deep and unwavering. You did not fail. You were not abandoned. You were chosen for release. The divine has seen the burdens you have borne, the silences you have endured, the compromises you have swallowed. This ending is the answer, not the curse. The road ahead, though lonely at first, will reveal itself as sacred ground, every step an initiation into a freer, more radiant you. So breathe, Virgo. Stand in the hollow of this moment with courage. For what is leaving was never meant to define you. And what is arriving will be nothing less than your resurrection. 2. Virgo's sacred liberation. When love becomes a cage. Virgo, let us speak the truth that echoes in the chambers of your heart, the truth you may have tried to silence with reason, with patience, with the endless labor of carrying what was never meant to be yours. Somewhere in your life, there is a bond that looks like love, sounds like devotion, even masquerades as loyalty, but at its root, it is not love. It is dependency. It is fear. It is the quiet poison of a connection misaligned with your soul's true rhythm. Perhaps it comes in the form of a lover who gives you crumbs instead of a feast. Perhaps it's a friend who takes your light but offers no warmth in return. It may even be family, bound by blood yet blind to your worth. And yet, because your heart is wide and your nature is loyal, you stayed. You convinced yourself that fragments were enough, that broken promises were better than no promises at all. You accepted the scraps of affection as if they were sacred bread. But let us call it what it is, self-betrayal. Because each time you gave more than you received, each time you ignored that quiet voice inside saying, "This is not love," you betrayed your own heart. Not out of weakness, Virgo, but out of fear, the ancient fear of abandonment. For many Virgos, the terror of being left alone feels heavier than the burden of an unworthy bond. And so you clung to the illusion, mistaking pain for intimacy, mistaking endurance for devotion. History is filled with stories of noble souls who held onto chains because they mistook them for ornaments. Think of the emperors who surrounded themselves with traitors, believing loyalty could be bought. Think of the poets who sang of unrequited love, convincing themselves suffering was a kind of holiness. Yet history also teaches us that liberation always begins with recognition. Chains only dissolve once you admit they are not bracelets, but shackles. Virgo, this is your moment of recognition. And it is holy. The universe has been whispering through your sleepless nights, through the fatigue that lingers in your chest, through the conversations that leave you emptier instead of full. This whisper is not judgment, it is intervention. A sacred force is stepping into your life, not because you are weak, but because your destiny is too great to be stalled by false love. Understand this, what feels like loss is actually sacred surgery. The divine does not strip away what is essential, it only removes what blocks your essence. And when that presence leaves your life, whether by choice, distance, or divine orchestration, something inside you will grieve. But beyond the grief, you will breathe differently. You will rise taller. You will feel the unmistakable lightness of a soul no longer shackled. Here is the paradox. The very bond you feared losing is the bond keeping you from the love you deserve. It is like clinging to a single dying candle while the sun waits outside your window. You were not born to live by fragments, Virgo. You were born to live in fullness, in devotion, in love that mirrors the loyalty you give so freely. And when you finally release this unhealthy tie, you do not step into emptiness, you step into alignment. Alignment with your worth, with relationships that reflect your sacred heart instead of draining it. You will no longer bend your spirit to fit into a mold of someone else's comfort. You will no longer mistake survival for love. You will stand, radiant and whole, and the universe will respond by sending those who see you, not just need you. So let this truth echo in you tonight. Holding on is not love, Virgo. Letting go is. Because letting go is how you say to your soul, I will not abandon you for the sake of another. That is the highest form of devotion, the kind that begins with yourself. And when you choose you, truly choose you, the chains will fall, and what once felt like loss will reveal itself as your greatest liberation. 3. Virgo's sacred unveiling. When truth breaks chains and healing begins. There are moments in life when silence can no longer be tolerated, when the heavens themselves lean down and declare, enough. Virgo, you have been wearing yourself thin, bending your light to fit the shadows of others, sacrificing joy for acceptance, and dimming your brilliance so that others might shine more comfortably. But the divine has been watching. And when Spirit says, enough, it is not a suggestion, it is a decree. This moment may arrive not with gentle whispers, but with rupture. A separation, sudden and searing, will fall into your life like lightning. To the human heart, it will feel like death, an emotional death, the shattering of illusions you work so hard to preserve. But to the soul, it is nothing less than resurrection. Just as autumn trees must release their leaves to prepare for winter's truth, so must you shed what has been suffocating your roots. The truth has been there all along, waiting to surface. Perhaps you noticed the small betrayals, words spoken without care, patterns of dismissal, the way your presence was taken for granted. You brushed it aside, telling yourself that love requires patience, endurance, sacrifice. And yet, beneath it all, your spirit whispered that this was not love, at least not the kind that honors the sacredness of your being. The separation you are entering now is not punishment, it is clarity, enforced by the hand of God. And yes, you will grieve. To part with what once felt like a cornerstone of your life is no small thing. Anger will come first, anger at them, at yourself, at the wasted years. This is the fire of purification, not destruction. Then grief will roll in like a tide, a hollowing sorrow that makes you question whether you will ever feel whole again. Do not run from these waters. They are washing away the illusions that chained you. And finally, as the days stretch forward, clarity will rise like the morning sun, soft at first, but undeniable. You will look back and see that the separation was the most profound act of love the divine could have granted you. In history, the greatest transformations were always born through rupture. Think of Joan of Arc, whose fiery conviction rose only after being stripped of all comfort. Think of Martin Luther King Jr., whose dream became unstoppable after he bore the weight of hatred and imprisonment. In the crucible of suffering, clarity emerges. The same is true for you, Virgo. Your pain is not wasted, it is alchemical. It is turning wounds into wisdom, heartbreak into holy ground. And there will come a day, not far from now, when you feel gratitude for the very ending that today feels unbearable. Gratitude that life refused to let you shrink into a role too small for your soul. Gratitude that spirit intervened when you would not. Gratitude that the pieces of yourself you once scattered in the name of love are finally being returned to you, whole and unbroken. This is your rebirth. This is your return. The emotional death is real, but so is the resurrection. And what rises from the ashes will not be the same Virgo who once begged for crumbs of affection. What rises will be sovereign, luminous, unafraid to take up space. So do not curse the separation. Do not mistake this divine act of removal for cruelty. Instead, see it for what it is. The hand of God drawing a boundary where you could not. The hand of love severing the ties that kept you small. Healing has already begun, even if you cannot feel it yet. One day you will look back on this season, and instead of mourning, you will bow in reverence. For the truth was unveiled, and in that unveiling, you were set free. 4. Virgo's soul graduation. The divine evolution through love and loss. There are seasons in life when the universe stops being subtle. For Virgo, this is one of those seasons. You may have noticed it already, the tension in the air, the silences that weigh heavier than words, the sharp edges of arguments that leave bruises you cannot see. Even the familiar warmth you once clung to now feels like a cold distance. These are not accidents. They are signals, deliberate and insistent, the handwriting of the divine across the fabric of your life. The universe is creating friction, not to punish you, but to propel you. Because you are not meant to remain where intimacy has been mistaken for intensity, or where familiarity is confused with growth. This is the lesson the cosmos now places before you. To separate the counterfeit from the real, to discern between need and love, between dependency and genuine devotion. It is the difference between a fire that burns and a fire that warms. For too long, you have tolerated the burn, calling it passion, when in truth it has been consuming you. The divine, in its fierce mercy, intervenes as both protector and teacher. First, protection, removing you from environments where your worth is constantly questioned, where silence becomes a weapon and distance becomes a prison. Second, preparation, clearing the path for a form of love you have not yet known, one that flows not from lack but from abundance. Third, evolution, forcing your soul to stretch, to grow, to unlearn the patterns that once seemed natural but were in fact chains. And finally, discovery, the breathtaking realization that your strength was never in their approval, but in your own unshakable spirit. This is your graduation, Virgo. Not the kind marked by applause and certificates, but by tears, by nights when you feel emptied out, by mornings when you rise heavier but also clearer. The diploma here is self-sovereignty. The honor is liberation. You are being asked to step beyond the lessons of scarcity, where love was rationed and conditional, into the realm of fullness, where love is not begged for but shared, not withheld but overflowing. I often think of history's great turning points. Galileo standing before the Inquisition, refusing to deny what his soul knew to be true, that the earth moves, that truth is not dictated by authority. Or Rosa Parks, sitting firmly in her seat, embodying the quiet power of no more. These moments were not just about science or civil rights, they were about evolution, about human beings refusing to remain small when spirit demanded expansion. You, Virgo, are living through your own version of this. The seat you once sat in, the relationship, the pattern, the false intimacy, is no longer yours. The divine says, stand up. Move forward. Graduate. Of course, there will be grief. You will feel the sting of loss, the ache of what could have been. You will wonder if the breaking was necessary, if the universe could not have taught you more gently. But hear me, the ache is not evidence of failure, it is evidence of love. Only those who love deeply grieve deeply. And yet, beyond the grief lies gratitude, the profound gratitude of someone who has walked through fire and emerged unburned, carrying not ashes but gold. Your intuition already knows this. That small, steady voice inside you, the one you've ignored in favor of logic or loyalty, has begun to rise. It tells you that the distance, the tension, the erosion of self-worth are not punishments but signs. Signs that you are ready to release what has run its course. Signs that you are ready for the freedom that comes not from clinging, but from surrendering. So let this be the chapter where you honor the intervention, not resist it. Let this be your rite of passage into a higher love, one that does not demand the dimming of your light, but celebrates it. For you are not meant to be consumed by the wrong fire, Virgo. You are meant to burn with the brilliance of your own truth. And as you walk through this graduation of the soul, know this, the divine has not abandoned you. It has elevated you. 5. Virgo's promise of love. The doorway to a higher union. There comes a moment when life itself rearranges the stage, when the curtain falls on a chapter that once defined your world, and a new act begins, one written not in desperation, but in destiny. For Virgo, the departure you are facing is not a cruel ending, but a clearing. The universe, in its uncompromising wisdom, is removing what no longer nourishes you so that you may step into the sacred promise of a love that elevates rather than diminishes, a love that honors rather than consumes. It is tempting to see loss as emptiness, to believe that something essential has been ripped away. Yet history shows us that what often looks like ruin is the seedbed of renewal. When Rome fell, it made way for a renaissance. When an old order crumbles, the soil is cleared for something more enduring, more refined. The same is true for your heart. The space left behind is not a void, it is a sanctuary being prepared. And into that sanctuary will walk someone who meets you not as a mirror of your wounds, but as a partner to your wholeness. This love will not arrive cloaked in drama, nor will it demand that you twist yourself into smaller shapes to be accepted. No, this love will come with depth. The kind of depth that does not flinch at silence, that holds steady in storms, that delights not in what you can sacrifice, but in who you are when you are fully alive. The difference is subtle but profound. Need grasps, while conscious choice opens. In the old cycle, you were chosen because you filled someone's lack. In the new, you will be chosen because your presence amplifies joy, because your spirit is recognized as sacred, because together you make more than you ever could alone. This is what it means to evolve in love. To graduate from survival bonds, those desperate ties forged in fear of being alone, into sovereign union, where both souls stand whole and still choose to intertwine. Think of the great partnerships of history, not built on dependency, but on mutual vision. Eleanor and Franklin Roosevelt steering a nation through turmoil, or Pierre and Marie Curie unlocking mysteries of science together. These are not tales of clinging. They are tales of choosing again and again, from a place of strength. Virgo, your heart is ready for this. The trials you have endured have not been wasted. They were initiations. Every disappointment, every betrayal, every time you shrank yourself just to be loved, it has all been preparation. You now know, deep in your bones, the difference between counterfeit intimacy and genuine connection. You now understand that true love does not ask you to betray yourself. And because you know, you will not settle again. Yes, the waiting can feel unbearable. The empty nights, the long silences, the ache of wondering if someone will ever truly see you. But remember, the divine does not withhold to punish, it withholds to protect. It waits until the soil of your soul is fertile enough to receive what it has always intended for you. And when this new love arrives, it will not feel like grasping at straws in the dark. It will feel like recognition, like two rivers meeting and realizing they were always meant to flow into the same sea. So trust the clearing. Trust the ache. Trust that love is not ending, but being rewritten on higher ground. The promise of new love is not merely romantic, it is spiritual, a covenant between souls who meet not out of necessity, but out of choice. And when that choice is made, Virgo, it will not diminish you. It will crown you. Virgo, listen carefully, because what you are experiencing now is not an ending, it is a sacred passage. This is not punishment. It is liberation. You weren't being rejected, you were being redirected. Every tear you've shed, every sleepless night you've endured, was not wasted. They were the necessary steps that brought you to this threshold of freedom. The separation unfolding in your life is not an accident. It is destiny moving with absolute precision. No maybe, no perhaps. This is certain, irreversible, and divinely orchestrated. The universe is clearing space, removing what no longer serves you, so that what is truly meant for you can finally arrive. It is like a graduation, a moving on from love that was built on scarcity, on fear, on compromise, into a love that flows from abundance, confidence, and truth. Yes, it hurts. It feels like loss, but it is not loss, it is release. It is the weight finally being lifted from your shoulders, the heavy backpack you carried for too many years being set down. The universe is not taking something from you, Virgo. It is making room for someone who will meet you at your depth, someone who will not run from your fire, but will rise with it. This is your turning point. When you stop mistaking habit for love, when you stop settling for crumbs, when you stop dimming your light to make others comfortable, you reclaim your wholeness. And from that wholeness, you will magnetize a love that is authentic, reciprocal, and enduring. Not because you are chasing it, but because you have finally become the fullest version of yourself, and true love cannot resist that radiance. So, Virgo, do not fight what is leaving. Do not cling to what the divine hand is removing. Instead, open your heart to what is being prepared for you. Share in the comments if you've already begun to sense this shift. Your story may be the very message another Virgo needs today. And if you're ready for more guidance on how to navigate this sacred transformation, subscribe and stay connected. Because your next chapter is already being written. And it is not a story of endings, it is a story of rebirth, of divine protection, and of the love that was always meant for you.